My name is Talha Ali Abasi. Roll number 01-1777202-050. And the topic of my presentation today is establishment, bureaucracy, and the Constitution of Pakistan. The adaptation of Government of India Act 1935. At the time of independence, Pakistan and India both had no constitution. Both of these countries had just been separated from the British Empire, and no form of constitution to govern the land existed. So the British, under the provision of Indian Independence Act 1947, gave both Pakistan and India the constitution that was in fact the Government of India Act 1935 with some modifications. The Federation of Pakistan was set down through Pakistan Order in 1947. Under this adopted constitution, the Government of India Act 1935, the Governor General, the position of Governor General was very influential. He was the supreme commander of land, naval, air force, and political power. The Governor General power to appoint prime ministers and some federal ministers. This was asked because the Government of India Act was made under the British rule, and the Governor General in a time in India of 1935 was considered a British agent of the Crown. So such powers are appointed to him. So in order to damage control or to prevent a person having such power, under Section 8C of Act 1947, the power of Governor General to act on discretion were abolished and restricted on 15 August 1947. Also, from 14 August 1947, all governor activities were brought under the command of control of a cabinet. The Governor General could exercise his power on the advice of the cabinet. The Governor General could exercise his power on the advice of the cabinet. In order to show, Governor General acting on advice of the cabinet was basically a form to give the constitution a more form of parliamentary form of constitution, not a presidential form of constitution where a single person was in power. In 1947, the Constitution Assembly passed the objective resolution, most known as Resolution on the Aims and the Objectives of Constitution. This was basically, since Pakistan was still governed by the Government of India Act 1935, it was necessary for the country to establish its own constitution. So the objective resolution was the first step towards constitution making. Liaquat Ali Khan and other members of the cabinet were those who passed the resolution. The text of the resolution was basically the sovereignty of the entire universe belongs to Allah alone. The authority should be delegated to staffs people to rules set by Allah. The constitution should be framed by the Constitution Assembly. Rights of minority would be protected. But basically, this constitution was made to please the ulama, because Pakistan was made on the basis of Islam, and a separate homeland for the Muslims. So then a resolution was passed by non-Muslim member, especially Perhari Barham, put forward a proposal for viewing public opinion on the motion. This was on the motion. The proposal was rejected by Liaquat Ali Khan and put to vote, where it was defeated. Following on, discussions were held where non-Muslims raised objections on the resolution and voiced some amendments to the resolution. On March 27, after speech, Liaquat Ali Khan assured the non-Muslims that amendments were put onto vote. The amendments were to put in the vote in the Constitutional Assembly. They were rejected by 10 to 21. After the motion, there were resolutions put forward to Constitution Assembly and adopted. The Constitution, however, created divisions on the basis of communal lines. The Muslims leaders voting against the amendments and non-Muslim leaders voting in favor of the amendments. This created a feeling of distrust among the minorities and a sense that they were being alienated from the constitution making of the country. Some amendments were quite moderate and institutionally kept a bigger picture in view. The resolution should have been passed with the consensus of the minorities. Of the objective resolution, the Constitution Assembly set up a committee whose function was to find principles of the Constitution based on the objective resolution. The basic committee made up an interim report which however was not finalized. It did not include issues regarding financial and qualification of the state of head, etc. However, since Pakistan was in dire need of a constitution, Liaquat Ali Khan presented the first draft of the constitution to the National Assembly in 1950. The objective resolution should the parts of draft were the objective resolution should be made a part of the constitution and should serve as a direct principle of state policy. The state of Pakistan was to be a federation. The central legislature was to be bicameral, etc. However, this draft was met by criticism and was unpopular in East Pakistan. The main point of focus was the quantum of representation in the proposed central legislature, meaning in the National Assembly, if you can say in today's terms. The four provinces of the West and the East Pakistan were given equal seats in the upper house, which was unfavorable to the East Pakistan as it had the country's majority of the population. This, along with the issue that the upper house had equal power to the lower house. So basically, the reports of this committee favored the West Pakistan by giving them powers and seats and representation the government equal that to East Pakistan. Whereas East Pakistan, which had a majority of the population, should have got majority of the votes. So it meant it would have majority of the representation of the country, meaning it should have more MNA seats in today's terms in compared to West Pakistan. So basically, should have been the East Pakistan that should have formed the government, not the West Pakistan. As East Pakistan a lot of members, so the deciding factor of government should have been East Pakistan. So this was the first point that laid the draft of differences between the East and the West Pakistan. Also Urdu being a national language did not sit well with the East Pakistani, sorry. According to them, Bengali was more soft, more spoken with the majority of the population of Pakistan. So why was Urdu given in preference? Following such heavy criticism, Liaquat Ali Khan withdrew the proposal and sent it back to the Constitution Assembly. The Assembly allowed the public to provide suggestions and modifications to the proposal in 1951, and a subcommittee was responsible for analyzing the prospect of these proposals. The subcommittee reported back to Basic Committee, which then reviewed and reported back in July 1952. However, by this time Liaquat Ali Khan had been assassinated and Khwaja Niazmuddin was the Prime Minister with the Governor General Ghulam Muhammad. It was presented to Prime Minister Niazmuddin to the Constitution on 22 December 1952 as a second draft of the Constitution. The basis was still the objective resolution, the head of state to be the Muslim. The seats were allocated to the communities and the people of the house. However, this time there was also criticism because the second draft, although more comprehensive and detailed, also received similar response as the first draft. But now here is the catch. This time the criticism was from Punjab, not from East, but from Punjab. They did not understand why East Bengal was treated as a single unit of equal importance to all other units put together. They considered this a violation of federal principles under which all units regardless size were allocated equal representation in the upper house. Critics demanded both houses have equal power and lower house representation on the basis of population. So basically, in this one, Khwaja Niazmuddin tried to appease the people of the East. The committee thought, let's give the East a little more power. And the Punjabis this time and the West Pakistanis, the leaders West Pakistan, like, why is East Pakistan been given more importance? Why is it been considered as one unit given more importance compared to the units of West Pakistan? So basically, they said votes shouldn't be have equal representation based on population, and they said that both houses have equal power and the lower house representation on the basis of population. However, they overlooked the fact that East Bengal was larger than all 9 units of West Pakistan put together. So basically, what they wanted was allocation of seats regardless on the basis of population. They wanted a purpose, as in the last committee report, both have equal representation regardless of their population, meaning West has 50 seats, East has 50 seats. With the East with a population of 100 million and the West with a population of 40 million. With East 5 times more, but the number of seats should be equal. Why? Because they consider violation of federal principles. So constitution making was a deadlock, and in fact it was a dead. In fact, this remained deadlocked till 1971. Let's say 1950, the constitution making of a country was a deadlock, with East and West constantly battling over the constitution. Right? In the following years, the anti-Ahmadiyya movement and the few shortages in Punjab led to a lot of upheaval. The anti-Ahmadiyya riots erupted in Punjab, and the military set up a martial law. Remember, the military set up a martial law in Lahore in 6 March 1953, but restored audit. But listen to the next part. But since Prime Minister Niazmuddin had cut the military budget by half, or by one third due to economic strain, the relationship between the military and the government was strained. Now remember, he had cut the budget, and the relationship was strained. So let's see how the military reacts, because this is where everything starts. The history of dictatorship in Pakistan, the history of everything, the history of military prevailing over civilian rule. Ghulam Muhammad, he's a civil officer who had taken the role of a prime minister, but then persuaded Khwaja Niazmuddin become prime minister and became the governor general. He was a very shrewd person in nature. Niazmuddin, at this time, remember, Niazmuddin had the back of the Constitution Assembly and could win any case against Ghulam Muhammad, who, according to Niazmuddin, was conspiring against him with bureaucrats. Remember, here comes bureaucrats and military officials to destabilize the government. However, Niazmuddin was a very slow-paced movement. He knew if he did anything such as that, if he went in Ghulam Muhammad, it would cause much more upheaval in the country, and tried to avoid that. So he tried to persuade to the UNO against Ghulam Muhammad, but however he was too slow to take action. On 17 April 1903, he was ordered to resign along with his cabinet, but when he declined, he was dismissed along with his cabinet under Section Act of Government of India Act. He had fallen now listen to these two terms: bureaucratic military coup. Why military? Because General Ayub had not come to the aid of the legally elected government. He decided to opt out even when Ghulam Muhammad misused his power, even when he dismissed a government who was elected, who had the vote of the people. Even when Niazmuddin pleaded to him, he still did not take action. After dismissal of Khwaja Niazmuddin's government, Ghulam Muhammad appointed a new prime minister and started the regular functions of the government. The Constitutional Assembly that met on 1957 passed some important bills. On 20th September 1954, it dismissed Podra. It was an act of 1949. This was an act that people could complain to the Governor General against any person or any government official. If the Governor General and General General instruct the judges to investigate upon the person, and if the person was found to be guilty, he would be suspended from the office. This was a highly unpopular act and was hated during the tenure of Khwaja Niazmuddin. The second move was the amendment of sections 9, 10, 10A and 10B of the Government of India Act, which I must say was still the acting constitution of Pakistan. These acts granted the powers to the Governor General, and with the amendment to these acts, the power of Governor General curtailed the power of the Governor General and prevented him from dismissing his ministers who could no longer hold the office during his pleasure. What I meant was prevented him. Ghulam Muhammad was hurt by the assembly when it curtailed his power and struck back. On 24 October 1954, by dissolving the Constitution Assembly, and announced he had put to an end what he called the parliamentary bickering. The dismissal of the Constitution Assembly, after he had tried to put an end to the restriction of the power of Governor General, presented an image that the decision was personal, not based on democratic principles. Ghulam Muhammad then instructed Prime Minister Muhammad Ali Bogra to form a cabinet without parliamentary support. Without parliament support. In this cabinet, was Major General Skandar Mirza and Commander in Chief Ayub Khan. See, first of all, he went undemocratic. He ordered the formation of a cabinet without the approval of the parliament, meaning he adopted himself to a presidential form of government. And then he introduced the cabinet included military generals, military officials. Why was military allowed into the parliamentary function in the functions of the state? This is the first time I say I'm strange. You give them a position, give them something out of it, but why give them such high positions, such as Minister of Defense? So you're basically giving the person who keeps army in control to a military official. Great way of keeping the military under control, Ghulam Muhammad. So this we can say marks the end of civilian dominance over military power. After all this upheaval, Ghulam Muhammad was discussed by Skandar Mirza, the person who had appointed cabinet. Skandar Mirza took over. After a time period of 9 years since the independence, Pakistan was able to draft its first constitution, which became effective 23rd March 1956. The groundwork of the constitution heavily relied on the Government of India in 1935. The constitution was complex and detailed. It contained 23 articles, divided into 13 parts and 6 schedules. The state name for Pakistan was Islamic Republic. The constitution named it was a flexible constitution. The constitution named the country Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Objective resolution was adopted. Federal system, the powers divided between the center and the provinces, unicameral legislature, meaning a single house. It was a parliamentary system. If the president was the head of the state, then the prime minister was the head of the government. Provincial autonomy, Islamic law, no law could be passed without the teaching of Quran and Sunnah, guarantee of fundamental rights. However, the languages were both Urdu and Bengali. Since the enforcement of this constitution 23rd March 1956, 3 prime ministers had been forced to resign in the time period of 3.5 years. There was a saying among Mr. Gandhi or the President of India, I don't remember who that time was, I don't know who to talk to Pakistan because they are changing prime ministers so constantly. The 1956 constitution had been introduced to promise election in 1957. Iskandar Mirza did not call this as he knew he would lose. Also, he was alarmed by the plan of Hussain Shahid Shurawardi. He was a prime minister during Iskandar Mirza's rule and he was dismissed to unite the political leadership of Punjab and Bengal against him. The frequent changes in East Pakistan forces the government to declare emergencies in Article 93 and local government taken a federal government. This is one of the reasons for martial law. A fight in East Pakistan led to a speaker being injured and later died. I missed this point. This was one of the reasons for martial law. The politicians were not sincere to the interest of the nation and would engage in activities that were favorable to them. This very reasoning saw the coming and going of 9 prime ministers in 11 years. The constitution allowed a one-unit scheme which was resented by the politicians of East and West. However, Iskandar Mirza was not willing to hand over power. When Qayyum Khan, president of Muslim League, refused the election delayed from 1958 to 1999, Iskandar Mirza began to lose the grip on Democratic Party's election progress. General Ayub saw this as a moment to further his own ambition and began to encourage generals to demand imposition of martial law in summer of 1958. In early October 1958, Mirza proclaimed martial law throughout the country. So, both men were forwarding agenda. Iskandar Mirza was trying to retain his power and Ayub was trying to increase his. Basically, a tussle between the military and the Iskandar Mirza. However, this thing all changed. Ayub was appointed the chief martial law administrator. Struggle for power ensued between both men, with Mirza appointing Ayub a prime minister in order to give legal framework a proper structure. Mirza tried to have the chief of air staff to arrest 4 generals close to Ayub. He tried to do damage control. He wanted to remain in power. I don't understand if the people don't want him in power, leave. But Iskandar Mirza wanted to remain in power, most people do. He was a politician and wanted to remain in power, and he nearly destroyed Pakistan for it. When Ayub met with his general and decided to remove Mirza from his power, Mirza was exiled to Britain where he died. After dismissing Iskandar Mirza and putting a ban on all political parties and dismissing the Constitutional Assembly, Ayub Khan continued the country under martial law. So, in his first steps towards constitutional reforms was the introduction of basic democracies. Basic democracies. This was a 4-tier system in which the ordinary people elected union council members, who in turn elected district and divisional member. This is known as a comprehensive scheme of local self-government. Later, it was also stated in the 1962 Constitution that the 80,000 elected Democrats from both wings would also form the Electoral College for the election of the President and the member of Central and Provincial Legislature. The basic democracy scheme can be viewed as General Ayub seeking a route to legalize his military reign and leadership. The basic democracy scheme not only allowed Ayub to continue as a president for 5 years, but also allowed him to frame a constitution for the country. Under the President Order of Three, basic Democrats were asked a vote of confidence in General Ayub. If the majority voted in favor, Ayub would deem fit to frame a constitution for the country. The elections were held on 14 February 1960 and 95.6% replied in affirmative. Of 1962, the Constitution Commission presented its report to Ayub on 6 May 1961. Ayub formed a subcommittee and demanded a report. This was done to frustrate the Constitution report and for Ayub to choose from the report that slanted towards his goal. Remember, slanted towards his goal. He preferred a presidential form of government and did not like the restriction the Constitutional Assembly put on the adult franchise. It took months to draft the constitution, and Ayub announced the constitution on 1st March 1962 to the nation by broadcast. The 1996 constitution had its groundworks based on objective resolution. Its most outstanding feature was a presidential form of government. Now see how Ayub formed a presidential form of government, how he made sure he remained in power. The president elected by electoral college as laid down in the constitution. The basic Democrats made up the electoral college. The most important point, the president could not be repealed unless impeached. The president nominated the cabinet from the members of the National Assembly. The president nominated judiciary and the provincial governors. The national legislature could not pass law without the approval of the president. The National Assembly could only suggest and administrate the legislation. The president had to agree to the legislation. So all of these pointed out towards the president. The president was not only the head of the state but now is also head of the government. So this was the first time a military official was not only recognized as president but also put the military in charge of the states or matter of the states. There were also amendments during Ayub's time that were made to the article. There were two amendments. The second amendment, 10 articles. It amended 10 articles. The amendment stated the president should dissolve the National Assembly before the expiry of his term. He would lose his office and within 120 days hold election will the hold office of 120 days until he is successfully elected. This was again, you can say, damage control. It was in order to curtail the power of the president in order to make sure he could not dissolve the National Assembly as he pleased. The Constitution 1906 empowered the President during proclamation of emergency to suspend a number of fundamental rights such as freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, freedom of trade. The amendment also allowed the President to move any court, stop and court proceedings regarding curtailing of fundamental rights. So basically, during emergency, President had the ultimate power. He was the only person in charge of the government and no court or civil no court or government could challenge him. When Ayub stepped down, he handed the reins to Army Chief Yahya, who declared martial law with immediate effect. He dissolved the National Assembly and two provincial assemblies. On 1 April, Yahya assumed the President of Pakistan, office of President of Pakistan. The proclamation of martial law allowed all acts in force before the abrogation of the constitution remained in force. All courts and tribunals are allowed to continue and exercise all their power and authority. However, they could not call any martial law regulation question or pass a judgment to it, or no writ be passed on martial administrator or any power. So once again, the country was under martial law, first under Ayub, now under Yahya, with the same things. No court could go against the martial law administrator. They could not pass any laws challenging the martial law. They could not pass any judgment on it, and they could not pass any judgment on people under the martial law administrator. So basically, Pakistan went from a parliamentary form of government to a civil servant government and Ghulam Muhammad, who made a presidential form of government. From there, it went to an Iskandar Mirza, who also formed a presidential form of government, and then to Ayub Khan, who declared martial law and then legalized his government in presidential form, and then from Yahya into martial law. So basically, democracy up till now, till 1971 in Pakistan, did not really exist. Democracy was just an essence given to the people, and the struggles between the bureaucrats and the military was what led to all of this. Bhutto had assumed power from Yahya under a military reign and was determined to return Pakistan towards democracy. In 1972, martial law was lifted and the National Assembly was called on the basis of election of 1970. PPP under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had received a majority in the West Pakistan. Representatives from different political parties were part of a committee that set up to draft a constitution. The committee presented its report to the National Assembly in April 1973 and findings received a vote of confidence in the National Assembly. On 14 August 1973, the Constitutional Assembly, which heavily relied on the Constitution 1956 and 1962, became the law. Even the language used in the Constitution was retained majority of the articles. The Constitution 1973 is a federal constitution. It establishes a central government and a government of federal units. The Constitution 1950, like the Constitution 1956, but unlike the Constitution 1962, the Constitution 1973 provides Pakistan with a parliamentary form of government. The Constitution 1973 provides the establishment of a bicameral legislature in the House. Pakistan Parliament consists of two houses, namely National Assembly, the lower house, and the Senate, the upper house. In 1973 Constitution grants the fundamental right of all citizens. So basically, after the martial law and the succession of East Pakistan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was the person who returned Pakistan towards democracy. However, there were certain aspects in the constitution that he later amended that one might say that the rule under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was a dictatorship of a civilian rule rather than a democracy It was dictatorship by a civilian, by an elected person, and these rules justify it. First, the Third Amendment, the victimization of political opponents. An amendment was introduced in the Code of Criminal Procedure that stopped the courts from granting bail to a person before his arrest unless a case was registered. This allowed the government to put political opponents in jail for an indefinite time under accuse of anti-state activities. The amendments also increased the time frame of emergency proclaimed by the president. Usually the period of emergency was 6 months, but the amendment allowed the period of emergency to continue indefinitely until a resolution was passed and assembly disapproving it. First, victimization of political parties and the increasing of emergency period. Third, mentioned is the setting up of FSS, Federal Security Force, a force that was directly responsible to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. This force was the one which victimized the political parties, broke up political protests, put political opponents in jail, made sure the Bhutto's rule goes unopposed. Sixth Amendment. This amendment allowed the Chief Justice and High Court Justice to continue serving after their term had expired. This was done to favor Chief Justice of Supreme Court Yaqub Ali, who retired after serving less than 2 years. He was very close to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. This amendment goes against the Fifth Amendment, which fixed the terms of serving of all Chief Justice. Favorism is a part of every government. Every government does this. So this rule, although unfavorable, but still, let's say every government does favor it. Seventh Amendment. This amendment called for a referendum to demonstrate a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister. If he failed to get the majority, he would resign. Vote of confidence is to obtain from the Parliament, not the people. The vote of not from the Parliament, not the people. Right. If a Prime Minister demands a vote of confidence from the people, then he is answerable to the Parliament. Thus, this would indicate a return to parliamentary presidential form of government. So, as I said, the politics of Pakistan was so unstable that in Pakistan till Zulfikar Ali Bhutto only one type of government prevailed, and that was presidential. May you consider it a parliamentary presidential form of government. The person whose power always made sure his rule was secure. Bhutto, you can see Bhutto said he introduced a presidential parliamentary form of government, but his rules say the opposite. Next, the constitutional. Next. The constitutional changes under Ziaul Haq, the withdrawal of 5th and 6th Amendment. Nusrat Bhutto had gone to the Supreme Court against the detention of Bhutto. Chief Justice Yaqub Ali presided over the court and moved the petition. The CLMA, since the Chief Justice were playing the game, they are retaliated by through CLMA Order No. 6 of 1977, issued 22 September. This allowed for the withdrawal of 5th and 6th Amendment of the Constitution. This meant that Justice Yaqub Ali, who was serving beyond his retirement age, had to retire and was replaced by Justice Anwar ul Haq. The Fifth Amendment, as I previously said, was an amendment that allowed the Chief Justice to serve beyond his time period of retirement. Yaqub Ali was serving beyond his time period. Zia saw that in case of Bhutto, if the case against Bhutto would go in a different way than he wanted, so he simply removed the Chief Justice and replaced him with the Chief Justice he wanted, Chief Justice Anwar ul Haq, the Chief Justice who was willing to play the military's game. In common sense, this normally happens in all political changes happens when one political scenario changes, situation changes one political party to another. The new political party introduces changes to last political parties decisions. But however, in this case, there was no new political party. Instead, there was a dictatorship with martial law on the country. So this is basically martial law. So we can basically say this is the prevalence of military over the first prevalence of first major interference of the military into the play of state. After Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's execution, after Nusrat Bhutto, judiciary under Anwar Ali Haq began to ask favor from the military. The military ended put to this affair by adding Article 212A to the Constitution's amendment. This put end to judicial reviews of the acts and orders of martial authorities. This put to stop interference by the courts and gave the military and free hand without supervision. This event also allowed the establishment of military courts. Also, the decision of military courts could not be challenged by high courts. Cases could be transferred from civilian courts to the military courts. Again, this is the same thing. The military was now fully established into the play of the state. They had got a taste of power during Ayub Khan and they wanted to extend that. Bhutto didn't play the game, he was gone. So now they power. But Military was not willing to give a free hand to anyone, and when they saw the judiciary was overstepping in the bounds, they decided to curtail it. And this is what was judiciary. We say the judiciary lacks a lot of power now. It is because during martial law and during the 70 years Pakistan has been the power of the courts have been cut down so much it has been say the courts have been rendered useless in the play of the government. If a military is not answerable to the parliament, not answerable to the judiciary of an area, so who is it responsible to? That's a very big question. In the cabinet announced by Zia on 5 July 19, most of the members were military officials and bureaucrats, and some ministers were taken from Pogra Muslim League. So he had puppet ministers from the Muslim League and military officials and bureaucrats who reigned the country. So where is the say of the people in this? This is Pakistan, ruled by militaries and civilian dictatorship. On 7th Feb 1979, amendments passed to the President stating that superior courts had power to review any law they thought were within the boundaries of Islam. The law then would be sent to the President Governor General, who amended with a conformative law. Sharia law were quite common during Zia's rule. He wanted a trend towards Islamism. You can say minorities were persecuted, especially Ahmadis were persecuted during his time. Now the most important part of all this, two important part of Zia's rule before he lifted the martial law. Article 48 gave the automatic validity to the decisions taken by the president. All his action, even if they violated human rights, were deemed legal. No decision taken by the martial law could be changed by the president's consent. And who is the president? Zia. The president could appoint prime ministers, puppet prime ministers, and other Syrian government officials without the need of consultancy. Well, his ultimate power. Who does he need to consult? The people. They're useless. There's no need to consult the people. He is the one and only authority. Bloody civilians, as you call them. Zia only lifted the martial law after passing the 8th Amendment on the Constitution. The President could dissolve the National Assembly and dismiss the Prime Minister. The President could appoint the Prime Minister, Governor of the province as the official. Zia was the government, and there was no government other than Zia. Everything was controlled by him, was him. 8th Amendment was the amendment that led after the death of Zia led to dismiss of three consecutive democratic governments, all because Zia and his dying gift gave the president the power to abolish any government he felt was unjust or corrupt. Great gift. I like it. He should have given other gifts to the nation also. Should have given the state 24 in power. Military, masters or the servant of the state. Democratic countries strive towards the subordination of armed wing of the state under civilian dominance. Military's sole role of existence is to safeguard the nation's border and protect its foreign and national interests from external aggression. Military is not to have a say in the democratic constitution of the state. Third world countries like Pakistan, which lack a strong legislative center, have failed to keep the military wing in control. This is the main reason for the military coup being a commonplace in Pakistan. Military is not trained to take political orders, and often the solution presented by military officials falls short in the long term. This trend or idea of military coup began when General Ayub was asked by Ghulam Muhammad to impose martial law. Ayub rejected but later took up a civilian seat, Minister of Defense in the cabinet. This was the first time the military had a say in the running of the country. Otherwise, the military was restricted towards the borders. It was the government which gave the military an entrance into the say of the center. A government should be strong enough, legislative enough to function to carry its orders without depending upon the army. It should the obedience of the orders can be carried out by the army, but the orders themselves cannot be formulated by the army. This is democracy. When Nizamuddin's government was dismissed, Ayub did not come to the aid of the legally elected government. thus supporting the statement that military as far as independence did not favor the idea of democracy. This is a good point. You can say that if Ayub had come to the aid of Niazmuddin, he would have ousted Ghulam Muhammad, and Ghulam Muhammad out, the government would have been stable. But that did not happen. Ayub declared martial law, not allowing the constitution to even breathe. When Ayub declared martial law, there was already a constitution by Iskandar Mirza, the Constitution 1956, but Ayub abolished that. Ayub abolished all political parties. Ayub literally put an end to the idea of political parties and constitution in Pakistan. The Pakistan was under martial law. According to Ayub, democracy had failed in Pakistan, and the martial law will continue as long as he felt the need for Pakistan to do so. His constitutional highly favored. He then, in order to legalize his regime, presented a constitution. The constitution highly favored a presidential form of government, and its main point allowed Ayub to retain power. Most important, Ayub could dissolve the National Assembly. This article would start from this point and become the famous Eighth Amendment, which led to subsequently 3 democratic governments being suspended. Although Eighth Amendment was introduced by Ziaul Haq, but the idea of dismissing the National Assembly by the President was laid by Ayub. Previously, the Governor General could dismiss the National Assembly, but on the advice of the cabinet. But with the president could dismiss the National Assembly without the advice of anyone. He was the sole owner of this power. So the idea that led to the fall of Benazir, Nawaz Sharif, and then again Benazir's government was this rule, the Eighth Amendment. The General Zia and Musharraf preferred a constitutional role for the military in the affairs of the state. They preferred a Turkish model of military in the state. This is, however, Turkey and Pakistan have two different situations. Turkish military under Mustafa Kemal Atatürk defended Turkey and foreign interest after World War I. Pakistan, on the other hand, gained independence on mass political movement. Thus, allotting the military any role in the constitutional affairs of the country would only abhorrent but would also be disrespectful to the freedom movement. The idea of military play in the state was put into practice by Zia and Musharraf by the formation of National Security Council. This was although abolished by the 8th and the 18th Amendment. This allowed the President to appoint the head of the military wings. After the death of General Zia, General Asim Beg allowed the transfer of power constitutionally to President Ishaq. He, however, did extract a price of transfer by having a say in the national matters of the state. This system of Torka continued till the military coup in 1999. The military refused action in 1993 by the federal government to take over the provincial government of Punjab. Later, it was the army which brokered a deal between the president and the prime minister, which led to the dissolving of the government. Thus, military indirectly engaged in activities of the government. Benazir Bhutto, although had the support of the populace behind her, she still visited the military headquarters before and after her selection. She even engaged the chief of army staff into decisions making of the country. In short, Ayub started the process of military takeover. Zia and Musharraf incorporated the military into the state. Zia had taken over the major part of the power of the state and shared only a small part with the political parties and bureaucrats. Musharraf, on the other hand, took complete control of the affairs of the state and only shared a proportion as long as the appointed rules were subordinate. So, over a time period of 70 years, the 4 military regimes changed from being total dictatorship to constitutional dictatorships, in which the military was slowly incorporated into the states. Slowly, the army had to say what was going on in the country, not the politicians. The army did not have to say an answer to the parliament, but the parliament had to return to the military for the answers. In fact, military was what was governing Pakistan. You could have the populace behind you, but still it was the military's final say if you were to have a future as a politician in Pakistan. In short, military during its forced regime had incorporated it into state at such a level that is not possible impossible for civilian governments to function independently of the military. Politicians fearing loss of government due to impeachment or military takeover. Constitutional changes induced by dictatorships in order to legalize their regimes and maintain their power in constitutional affairs, such as the Eight Amendments, left the civilian governments trying to reverse the change or implement these changes to solidify their standing, such as dismissal of three governments, subsequent governments by a single president, or the fact that most civilian politicians are byproducts of military dictatorships trying to establish political parties, MQM, Calf League, in order to legalize themselves or to produce obedient civilian governments. MQM, Calf League, these are the prime examples. Noon League during Ziaul Haq's time, caused Calf League, and MQM during Zia Musharraf's time. Military is in fact embedded in everything. Educational heads are retired military personnel. Corporate heads are the same. Military is even now in civil service, with Zia fixing a quota of military personnel in civil service. In 1982, more than 40% of Pakistan ambassadors abroad were military officials. The role of bureaucracy, masters or the servants of people. The civil service of Pakistan can trace back its roots to the year 1792, when the East India Company first started collection of taxes through its employees. The company formulated rules and the procedure for the employees, and later Fort Williams were made for the training of the employees. Civil service in Pakistan is based on the same colonial style of East India Company. In short, the bureaucrat came with the sympathies and interests slanted towards the bureaucracy rather than interest of the nation. At the time of British East India Company or the British rule, the bureaucrats who were given positions by the British were taught in such a way that the interest lied with the not lied with the populace, but rather lied with the people governing the populace. So they thought for the betterment of the British Raj, not for the betterment of the people. And this was what was carried out forward in the civil service at the time of independence. The bureaucrats at the time of independence were more slanted towards the ambitions of the bureaucracy rather than the furtherment of the people. The military regimes in Pakistan had to rely on bureaucracy for the smooth moving of the country, strengthening the position of the bureaucrats. At the same time, there was decline in the influence held by the bureaucrats. But as the military regimes came into power, bureaucrats were given positions. As during a lot of bureaucrats were given stronger positions because it was a time during which the bureaucrats had powers. They were to run the country. They were made heads of several departments such as R&D. But at the same time, there was also in decline because before military regimes, the bureaucrats such as Ghulam Muhammad were the ones who were giving people orders. They were the ones who were appointing the heads of R&Ds. But now the military were people in person, and they were the ones who were appointing the bureaucrats, giving them the orders. The lack of people to employ high level positions such as finance and commerce led to entry of high level bureaucrats into positions like finance ministers. Once they used such position as a gateway into politics, they sensed a weak politics surrounding the open manipulation. They then occupied importance as Governor General and Prime Minister. Example of Ghulam Mohammed Iskandar Mirza. This is an ideal example of how Ghulam Muhammad and Iskandar Mirza bureaucrats stepped into politics. You can blame them for interfering in the politics, but but you also have to blame the politicians for leaving a weak political structure that was able to be manipulated. The first individual to miss this government on the basis of personal gain was Ghulam Muhammad. He dismissed the government saying he had put an end to the bickering of the people. That was Iskandar Mirza. He said was bring, and Ghulam Muhammad dismissed the government when they tried to curtail his power. He not only set up a trend of presidents of Guyana dismissing civilian governments, but he was also an individual to invite Ayub to impose martial law. Ayub had declined. This was the moment so the idea of military take on the armed wing. Later, Ayub was given a post in the cabinet which a big mess of Ghulam part. Thus, the first one who messed with the political surroundings were bureaucrats. So initially, it was not the politicians who invited the military. It was actually the bureaucrats who were the first ones to invite them. Ghulam was the first one who set up a cabinet without the permission of without the approval of the government, without approval of the parliament, and these include Iskandar Mirza and Ayub Khan. who were two military officials in governmental posts. So the who invited the armed wing to take an interest in state of the in the affairs of the state? Bureaucrat. So you cannot say bureaucrats are being bureaucrats are being mistreated. They were the ones who started all this mess. Ghulam Muhammad especially. Under Ayub, as I previously said, bureaucrats were given a lot of position. However, under Zia, this decreased a lot, as Zia dismissed a lot of bureaucrats with sympathies towards Zia, and in their places they fixed a quota of military, fixed a military of quota into the civil service, ensuring the military had a stand in the civil service too. But overall, it was both the military and the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats at the time of independence thought this aloof from the people, and this is what led to their downfall. They were the ones who invited the army.